Here at Helmuth Ford, we are a small-town dealership with no hassle and no pressure.
The Watch Your Opera House presents the Old Man Band this Saturday, November 16th at 7 p.m. Old Man Band has been bringing their good time music to fans in East Central Iowa since 2018. Tickets are just $10 and can be purchased at watchyouroperahouse.org and also at the door. The concert's sponsor is Kelowna Auto Used Cars and Trucks. It's Old Man Band this Saturday, November 16th at 7 p.m. at the Watch Your Opera House. Attention, please! We have an update on Santa Steve's stocking.
Ho, ho, ho!
Santa Steve's stocking is going to be full of a prize package valued at $1,000! $500 in gift cards. Hallelujah! $500 in cash! With 20 different outlets to register at. More details coming soon. Retro Antique Tour, a shop hop adventure, Christmas edition, is this Friday and Saturday, November 15th and 16th, with stops in Oskaloosa, Pella, New Sharon, Ottumwa, and Lytton. The Retro Antique Tour is designed for people to discover hidden gems in shops and communities in a well-organized and distinctive antique shopping experience. Get more information at brushedbyjude.com. It's the Retro Antique Tour this Friday and Saturday, November 15th and 16th.
Welcome back to the show!
Welcome back to the show!
And now, your hosts of the Card Subject to Change podcast, the For Frequency's Sake Tag Team Champions of the World, the Wizard CZ, and Never Wrong Nick Bull.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Card Subject to Change, the podcast by the fan for the fan. We're so happy you've tuned in and found us, and we're back with another episode to talk, of course, about wrestling. I am your host, Never Wrong Nick Bull. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my tag team partner. We are co-champions of the For Frequency's Sake Network. We are the co-hosts of the Card Subject to Change podcast. He is the one. He is the only. He is the Wizard CZ. Wiz, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited. We've got a new guest in the studio. Always love having new guests come in. And it's good because I feel like we're hitting that lull between the end of the year and the Royal Rumble that kind of hits with wrestling. So
you're right. You're right. We are kind of in a lull with wrestling. No, really, I mean, outside of War Games, no really major shows left in the year.
Well, there is Full Gear.
Well, I mean, major shows.
Okay, fair enough.
No, I'm not throwing any AEW shade here. I know we got Full Gear and World's End, but it does kind of seem we're in a lull. Like everybody's kind of waiting for War Games to happen. And then, of course, the countdown to Royal Rumble, and then we're back in WrestleMania season. So, hey, we found something to get you through this lull. And like you said, we've got a first-time guest in here. I love having first-time guests in here because I get to ask my favorite question, of course.
Of course. Before we bring in our guest here, I just want to remind everybody we are powered by Lopez Pizza, built by Durham Remodeling, colored by Ryan Allison Tattoo, and of course protected by Jared Zook of Country Financial. Let's just welcome him into the studio. We've got the pro wrestling pitchman himself, Mr. Cody Kaiser. Cody, welcome aboard.
Hi, Card Subject to Change. This is Cody Kaiser here. That's right, the man of the people, the man with the deals, America's #1 pro wrestling pitchman. How's it going, guys?
Good to
It's
have
going
you.
great. I want one of those headsets for this show. How do I go about getting one of those?
Well, you can come right through me. It's easy. All I need is just 17 easy payments. Actually, I like you guys. We'll make it 16 easy payments of just $49.99. All right. I'm nice. Okay. What can I say? And I'll get one shipped right to you.
Oh, this is going to be a lot of fun already.
I might have to take you up on that offer.
Oh, don't worry. You already did by agreeing to have me on here. Any deals I bring up, you guys have already agreed to. If you would have read the fine print, it was included, so you can't, sue me. So,
Nick, you were in charge of this contract. I know I booked him, but you were in charge of reading the contract. So
Yeah, I got to do a better job of it. I just kind of browsed over it. I browsed over it like the wrestlers do when they do the contract signing. They just go ahead and sign. That's kind of like how I was.
exactly. Well, don't worry. Even if you looked close, you probably wouldn't have found it. But
Well, Cody, we're glad
I
we got
appreciate
you.
doing business with you guys. Yeah,
Oh,
I was going to say.
Absolutely.
We're glad you're here. We're willing to hear your pitch. We're glad we got you in studio. But I'm going to go ahead and ask you what I ask all our other first time guests, and that is this: why pro wrestling? What got you into it? What was it that made you go, oh man, I got to have more of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always love, I guess I'll start with my first memory with pro wrestling, and just because I love it. So I was a huge Mick Foley fan, but for a little different reason than most. So I remember being very young, and I don't know how it all lines up because I can never figure out how the dates, but I specifically remember flipping through channels one night, and I saw something about how Mick Foley, if he lost, he was going to have to retire. And I was so upset, and I was just like, and I remember like crying to my mom, like, oh, I don't want Mick Foley to retire. So I was a huge fan of a show called Robot Wars, and Mick Foley was the host of Robot Wars USA. And I thought if he lost, he was going to have to quit Robot Wars. And I was just so upset. And I was just, man, it ruined it. And I was like, no, I don't want that. Because I had no idea about wrestling, nothing like that. And then it came to be that my brother had a friend in high school, my younger brother, and his family was into wrestling. And so they watched WrestleMania 22 in Chicago. And so they got the DVD, and my brother started kind of watching it. And so we got the DVD. And so I was kind of sitting, hanging with my brother and watching it. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, this is crazy. Like the theatrics that go into it and everything, especially. And then, so I knew Mick Foley from Robot Wars, and I saw his match with Edge in the hardcore match. And man, I was hooked. We both started doing, and like the Hardys were big because we're brother tag team. And yeah, and so we went through like 4 different trampolines we broke over the years of wrestling. So yeah, that's kind of what all got my peaking interest.
So then I'm going to follow that up here. What was the crystallizing moment for you that said, I have to do this? This has to be where my life goes.
Yeah, I honestly think it was just WrestleMania 22. Like I said, especially that Edge and Mick Foley match. But just in general, and just spending that time with my brother, and like we both just bonded so much over it. And it was like, I want to do this. This looks awesome. Like, look at, like I said, not just the wrestling aspect, but the theatrics was so much, the facial expressions, and like, I mean, not like Mick Foley was great at connecting with the crowd. And that's what I always loved. But Edge with the facial features, I just hated him. But as I start to go in, I'm like, man, I love to hate this guy. He's like just so good. And so, yeah, that's kind of where my, like, really, honestly, that's what I can picture. I can remember my brother and I just doing and pretending, and I'm like, yep, this is it. First show I've ever watched, but this is it.
I love you bring that up. WrestleMania 22, of course, that hardcore match with Mick Foley and Edge. I think that's when, in my opinion, that's when like Edge really took off, is when he was like the rated R superstar. He had Lita. He was the guy you loved to hate. Like you wanted to see him lose. But he was so good at everything he did. And you talk about those facial gestures. Like that's one thing that I would always like speak up and remember about Edge is his facial reactions and how well he was. And I love that rated R superstar stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love one thing that I'm always watching, whether I'm watching independent wrestling or watching the big dogs, I'm always looking at people's faces to see how they react to certain things, how they react to a kick out, how they react just in general, because that's part of the fun of it all, is to see the reactions. Cody, what we're talking about WrestleMania 22, and you're talking about Edge, Mick Foley. What are some of the other shows that you remember? Who else did you follow as you were coming in and getting into the wrestling? Yep.
Yeah. So besides for kind of Mick Foley and hating Edge, Rey Mysterio was another big one because, of course, around that age, and especially 22, just winning the World Heavyweight title. So that was another big inspiration. Of then Undertaker. I mean, it's can't go wrong with the Undertaker. So those were kind of, I would say, and HBK, I guess, too, was another, big one, especially him coming back after, or I mean, his match with Vince and stuff was another insane one to watch. And so, yeah, and then those were, I would say, kind of my main ones, and just, following their career. And then it was cool once I got into it, when you see like the Shield come is probably the first one I would say, like, I've been watching their entire career, and so that's cool seeing the evolution and being like, okay, now I can see why, some people like love guys that I'm like, oh, they're good, but it's like, oh, you've seen their entire progression. It's like, that's really cool. One of the best parts about wrestling, you see evolution. And not the group either, but
Right. I knew what you meant. You look back on it. I seen something the other day where someone had ranked the best factions ever, and they had the Shield at number 1. I mean, it's kind of hard to argue because all three guys went out and became megastars on their own. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue that.
Exactly. I would say even if you want to include the special guest, the Triple H and the Kurt Angle, I mean.
Exactly, right? The special honorary members were our Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for
exactly.
sure. For sure. How does one, I want to know how you got into wrestling. How you decided, hey, I'm gonna give this a go, and talk about that a little bit, and then I want to get into the evolution of you becoming the pro wrestling pitch man.
Absolutely. So I guess to start, so right when I turned 18, graduated high school, I'm like, I want to do this. I want to be a pro wrestler. So I went online, found, what wrestling companies are around. And I actually found Brew City Wrestling out in Milwaukee, West Allis, Wisconsin, they were at the time. And so I trained there for about just over a year, back before they had the Lumberton Academy. And it was just before the shows and kind of training, and that was going well. But then I got mono, which basically I couldn't do anything physical for over a year. And then I was in college at the time, and everything got busy. So I had to quit, sadly. So I had kind of been off for a while. And then Stumpy, Justin Reistek, he wrestles in kind of my area and stuff. He had lived in my hometown of Warren, Illinois for a while back in the day. And so he knew my family. And so he runs shows up here for Homegrown Wrestling. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey, if you want to come help, anything, just I know you've done this a little bit. So I did for a while. And he eventually started having me do some spots. And the one day he kind of pulled me aside. He's like, I can see that passion still there. He's like, we got a training school down in Sterling Rock Falls and run by Zeke Zishi. And it's great school. He's like, I want you to. He's like, I can tell that passion's still there. So I finally was like, you know what? I'm working now. It's good, but I'm like, I do got that passion. I'm like, I just got to finally just commit again. And instantly, yep, I'm like, all right, we're doing this.
So how did you become the professional wrestling pitchman? How did the Evolution of Cody Kaiser come to being who you are right now?
Well, you see, one's kind of born in the pitchman role. No, actually, so 1 year for college, I was always the last minute Halloween costume, like last second, like what can I do? So the 1 year I decided to go as sexy Billy Mays, as of course one does, because why not? And so when I was training for Zawa and stuff, I got asked by Zeke Zishi if hey, like if you want to, you can be in this Halloween costume battle royal we're having. And I'm like, this is kind of last minute. I'm like, what do I have left? I'm like, I still have that costume. I'm like, yeah, that might be a fun, stupid thing to go out, bring a thing of OxyClean with me and just go out and, do a whole basically Billy Mays bit. And so I go out and do it and I'm like, oh, whatever. And a couple of days later, I get a message from Zeke and he's like, I really like that. That should be your gimmick. And I'm like, all right, never once ever thought of that being fun. I'm like, I can see how it could be, fun and stupid. And it's like, especially as a heel, I'm like, all right, let's see where it goes. And I just kind of committed and here we are.
That's
I'm glad you had OxyClean instead of the Flex Seal for that
Oh,
Halloween Battle
absolutely.
Royal.
Absolutely. Got to be Billy Mays all the way, man. I can't be out, bringing in those other products.